Metaphysical poetry and Donne as a metaphysical poet. Paragraph number 1. Introduction. Metaphysical poetry is the product of the Jacobean age in the 17th century, and Donne is undoubtedly considered to be the founder of this school of poetry. The other poets who followed the norms of this school are Crashaw, Cowley, Herbert, and Vaughan. Dryden was the first critic who used this title for Donne and his followers. This was subsequently confirmed by Dr. Johnson, who wrote an essay on the metaphysical poets in his Life of Cowley. The essential nature of metaphysical poetry, however, has been interpreted differently both in literal as well as metaphorical senses. Following their respective literary sensibility, critics have evaluated the metaphysical poets in terms of approval and disapproval also. According to Hillier, literally it has to do with the conception of existence, with the living of universe and man's place therein. Loosely, it has taken such meanings as the difficult, philosophical, obscure, ethereal, involved, supercilious, ingenuous, fantastic, and incongruous. In Grierson's view, Donne's poetry is metaphysic not only in the sense of being erudite but in the proper sense of being reflective and philosophical. In other words, metaphysical poetry was inspired by a philosophical conception of the universe and the role assigned humans in the great drama of existence. But we find a kind of contempt for the metaphysical poets, the neoclassical critics, until the advent of 20th century, when the social temper was in tune again, the metal sensibility, and there was a revival of this school of poetry. The following are the main features of the metaphysical school of poetry. Paragraph number 2. Metaphysical poetry. Metaphysical poetry essentially is a revolt against the old traditions and conventions of theme and expression in poetry. Donne refused to accept the old Petrarchan conventions of love, Platonic idealism in life, and cheap sentimentalism of Elizabethan romanticism. He came up with something new which conforms to the new sensibility of the contemporary age. He also set aside the pastoral conventions and classical norms. The metaphysical poets, in Johnson's words, desired to say what they hoped had been never said before. They endeavored to be singular in their thoughts. In fact, they took delight in novel thoughts and expression. They played with the thoughts as Elizabethan had played with words. And for splendor of sound and imagery, they substituted subtlety of thought. Paragraph number 3. Donne as a metaphysical poet. Metaphysical poetry is mainly concerned with two themes of love and religion, and the characteristic Elements of this kind of poetry are quite evident in both type of terms. Donne is revolutionary, argumentative, intellectual, rather obscure, witty, scholarly, and uses his peculiar colloquial style in both. Stereotypes are seen nowhere. If they are seen, they are just okay. Paragraph number 4. Apparently, metaphysical poetry seems to be inspired by a philosophical conception of universe. As a matter of fact, its themes are simple human experiences, joy and sorrow of love, the thrill of adventure and battle, the mystic experiences and the inner conflicts known to the greatest thinkers and philosophers. Donne and his followers are not the metaphysical poets in the full sense of term. They may be metaphysical in the restricted sense. Donne is metaphysical by nature of his scholasticism, his knowledge of philosophy, and the new learning of the Renaissance, his deep reflective interest in his personal experiences, the new psychological curiosity with which he writes of life, love, and religion. Paragraph number 5. Philosophical references. Another quality of metaphysical poetry is that it is replete with philosophical references. A whole book of philosophy can be compiled out of these. Learning in itself is a positive qualification and a part of the poet's high sensibility, but the too much of it in Donne and other metaphysical poets tends to mystify the common reader and makes their poetry rather obscure. Dr. Johnson says that the metaphysical poets drew their conceits from recesses of learning not very much understood by common readers of poetry. In the task of trying to find the verbal equivalent for states of mind and feeling, to quote T.S. Eliot, the metaphysical poets made themselves difficult to understand. Paragraph number 6. Argumentative and balanced tone. Another quality of metaphysical poets is their argumentative, persuasive, and analytical tone and temperament. Whether appealing to God for mercy or persuading the beloved to indulge in love-making frankly, they were argumentative and logical. Yet they maintained unified sensibility in their expressions. Thoughts and feelings are combined in a kind of balanced harmony. The extremes of imagination as found in romantics and the too much of intellect and reason as discovered in the neoclassicals is avoided. The imagination and intellect keep a sense of proportion. Paragraph number 7. Distinctive diction. A distinctive poetic diction is another quality of the metaphysical poets which puts them in sharp contrast with the poetic language of the Elizabethan on the one hand and with the artificial and ornate style of the Augustans on the other. The conceits of the metaphysical poets are far-fetched, not easily comprehended by the ordinary people. It appears as if dissimilar ideas have been yoked together in the images. Yet the metaphysical poets prefer to use the common, casual, and conversational style in their poetry. They cared more for clarity, precision, and control in their utterances. However, their imagery is drawn from the contemporary sciences as well as old philosophies. The fields of knowledge include astronomy, geography, and religion. The purpose of images in the metaphysical poetry is to define the emotional experience by an intellectual parallel. Wit is the special quality of metaphysical poets described by T.S. Eliot as a mechanism of sensibility which could devour any kind of experience, simple, artificial, difficult, or fantastic. The dramatic element pervades almost all the poems, both amorous as well as religious. Paragraph number 8. Conclusion. The characteristics illustrated above suggest quite clearly that Donne and his followers were the poets of a unique kind, different both from romantics and neoclassicals. They were also at variance with the Victorians in their literary taste and temperament. Although they were not appreciated much in their own time, they made a significant contribution in the field of English poetry. The revival came about in the 20th century because of many common grounds in the 17th and the 20th century. The main credit goes to T.S. Eliot for bringing about this realization in the contemporary criticism. Thank you. Thank you.